Hi guys. So when we left off yesterday, Henry was trying to act like having this part of the little boy didn't bother him and that he was totally cool with it. And he was thinking if he did that, if he acted like he was fine with it, the other kids would stop making fun of him. And I had predicted that that probably wouldn't happen. So we know that Henry is trying to figure out a way for this to not be a big deal, for him to not have to do it. So we will read and see today what else happens to Henry. It was a good idea, but it didn't work. Henry would have to think of something else. Maybe he could pretend to be sick. No, that wouldn't do. His mother would make him go to bed, and if it did happen to snow, he would have to stay in the house while all the other children were out sliding on the 33rd Street hill. By the time Henry reached his house on Klickitat Street, he decided to say nothing about the operetta to his mother and father until he could work things out. He said hello to his mother, who was writing a letter on the typewriter, and then he went into the kitchen to fix himself a snack of peanut butter, jam, and pickle relish on graham crackers. He spread a cracker with peanut butter and gave it to Ribsy. Then he leaned against the refrigerator to munch and think. I'm going to stop for just a second to make sure you know what a typewriter is, because I'm not going to take it for granted that you do. So back in the day, boys and girls, before there was a computer, there are these things called typewriters. And a typewriter had a keyboard, like a computer would, but there was no screen. There was nothing to look at. You would take a piece of paper and feed it into the typewriter and crank a handle on the side, and it would run your piece of paper through. And then you would type on the keyboard keys. And there was ink in the typewriter, and it would punch the paper, stamp the paper, essentially, with letters. So you didn't see anything come out on a computer screen. You just would type it all on this typewriter, and everything went onto a piece of paper. So these books are pretty old, and that's what Henry's mom was using, was a typewriter. Tap, tap, tap went the typewriter. Henry fixed himself another cracker. Tap, tap, tap. He heard his mother pull the sheet of paper out of the machine. Then he heard her go into the bedroom. The typewriter. That was it. Hey, Mom, can I use the typewriter? May I use the typewriter? May I use the typewriter? Asked Henry patiently. Yes, Henry, but don't pound too hard. Henry gulped down his graham cracker with peanut butter, jam, and pickle relish. He wiped his fingers on the seat of his jeans and went into the living room. There he sat down at the desk, took a sheet of paper from the drawer, and put it in the typewriter. He thought a while and then began to type. He didn't make the typewriter go tap, tap, tap the way his mother did. He only made one tap at a time, and then, after a long pause, while he looked for the right letter, he made another tap. He had to remind himself to push the extra key to make capital letters. Henry worked a long time. Fortunately, his mother did not pay attention to his typing. Tap, tap, tap. At last, it was finished. Henry pulled the paper out of the typewriter and read, Dear Miss Roop, please excuse Henry from the play. He has too much work to do at home. Yours truly, Mrs. Huggins. And I'm going to turn this around so you can see his letter. Do you see all those mistakes? So he's trying to pretend like his mother sent this letter to the teacher. But clearly with all those mistakes, the teacher's going to know it's not Mrs. Huggins sending it. Somehow, it didn't look the way he had thought it would. The capitals were not in the right places, and he knew much wasn't spelled with a J or yours with a Z. His fingers had just put themselves in the wrong keys. Henry tore his letter into little pieces and threw them in the fireplace. He ran another piece of paper into the typewriter and started again. Tap, tap, tap. When the second letter was finished, it read, Dear Miss Roop, please exclude Henry from the play. He has too much work to do at home. Yours truly, Mrs. Huggins. Look at the picture of this one. It's a mess. Henry studied it. Those capitals again. He pushed the thing too soon or not soon enough. And who ever heard of a word like exclude or doat? His fingers just didn't hit the right keys. No, the letter was not a finished product. Henry tore this one up too and threw it in the fireplace. He would have to think of something else. When rehearsal started after school the next day, Henry still had not thought of a way out. Miss Roop said that today the children would read their parts, but by next week they must have them memorized. Henry, you and Alice are on the stage first, she directed. Alice was the 8th grade girl who was to play the part of Timmy's mother. Come on, Henry, don't waste time. Henry slouched up the steps to the stage. He pulled his crumpled part out of his hip pocket and looked at it. He decided to pretend he couldn't read it. Maybe if he read everything wrong, Miss Roop would give someone else the part. Alice read, Hurry up and get into bed, Timmy. This is Christmas Eve and good little boys should be asleep when Santa Claus comes. Henry held the paper almost against his nose. He frowned and squinted. He didn't say, Yes, Mother. He said after scowling and twisting the paper around, Yeah, Ma. Henry Huggins, Miss Roop interrupted, you read what is typed on that paper. Well, gee whiz, Miss Roop, it's so blurry I can hardly see what it says. Bring your part to me. Henry slouched off the stage and handed it to her. Now, Henry, it isn't as blurred as all that. However, since you have such a long part, you had better trade with me. Well, that's that, thought Henry. None of his ideas seemed to work. Continue, ordered Miss Roop. The operetta proceeded. It seemed to Henry that it took a long time to go through it. The music teacher played the music for the songs they were supposed to learn by next week. Henry discovered that in the second act, he was supposed to stand in the center of the stage and sing a song all by himself. It went, Hurrah for Santa, hurrah for St. Nick. He comes from the north with reindeer and sleigh, riding on clouds up high in the sky with a pack full of toys so children can play. It was the dumbest song Henry had ever heard. We'll have to see what Henry tries to do to get out of this tomorrow.